Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I am Callie and today I am going to be going over all of the books I read in July. So I read a fair amount. I read 15 books and I DNF'd 2. So I have a fair amount to get through. I have them broken down into sections. I'm still trying to figure out how I want to structure these videos. I really liked doing it by rating. So I think I'm going to continue to do that, but my first section is actually going to be all the books that I reread and books that I'm not giving any rating to. So I'm not giving any rating to White Rage by Carol Anderson because this isn't a book that needs a rating. It is to further my education on the Black Lives Matter movement. I've been trying to find books to help me understand the movement and the roots of all of the issues. And I heard that this was a good one to start with, and I think it is a really good one to start with. This book outlines a lot of things that are missing from our history books. It outlines how white people have raged against different movements for people of color throughout history, and it's broken down into sections in between different times in history, starting right from the end of the Civil War. It is a fantastic read, and I recommend it to anyone trying to educate themselves. So I reread 3 books this month. The first book that I reread was Two Dark Reigns by Kendare Blake. This is the 3rd book in the 3 Dark Crowns series, and through my entire reread of that series, and I think it's going really well. I do really like this one. I believe I gave this one 4 stars the first time I read it, and I think this is at I think I dropped it down to a 3.5. This book is mainly set up for our finale, which is fine. Setup's fine, but for a 3rd book, it was a lot of setup. What I did really like about this is we get a lot more of the history of the queens in this book, so I did enjoy that aspect of it. The next book that I reread and I actually listened to was Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows by J.K. Rowling. I gave this 5 stars. I love this series. I reread it or re-listen to it every year. And I will continue to do that. I love this story. I learned how to read with these books, so and I'm a sucker for finales, and I think this book is the reason why I'm a sucker for finales to this day. And the last book that I reread was The Cerulean by Amy Ewing. This is just an odd series, but it's really fun. This follows a girl named Sara who lives in a city above the sky, and her city is supposed to travel from planet to planet, but in order for her city to move, they have to break the tether to the planet below them, where they are like sucking up the nutrients of the planet. And in order for them to break the tether, one of the Cerulean, which is their race, must sacrifice himself and jump off of the city to break the tether. Well, Sara is chosen, but when she jumps off to break the tether, she lands on this world unsure what to do, unsure what went wrong, and has to figure out a way to get back home and actually break the tether. So we follow Sara, and we also follow her best friend Leela dealing with the grief because she thinks Sara is dead now and their city isn't moving. So Leela is also trying to figure out what went wrong while also dealing with the grief of losing a best friend. I think this is a unique world. I love the alien race that we get. I know a lot of people see a lot of issues with this book, but I think that's a lot of nitpicking in my opinion. I really enjoy it, and it's just fun. I gave it 4 stars the first time I read it, and I'm keeping it at 4 stars. Alright, so we're gonna work backwards. I'm gonna start from my DNFs and move all the way up to my 5-star read. So like I mentioned at the beginning, I DNF'd 2 books this month. I DNF'd Winterglass by Lexa Hillyer. This is the sequel to Spindlefire, which was a retelling of Sleeping Beauty, but more to the Grimm's fairy tale-esque aspects of Sleeping Beauty. And the first one was okay. It wasn't anything to write home about, but I was interested to see what they were going to do with the second book. And they honestly threw out all of the fun aspects that I liked about book 1, where it was these curses that made them mute or deaf or blind, and like actual fae curses. They like got rid of all of that, which created so many plot holes. And it felt the writing was horrendous in my opinion, so I did not mesh that. I think I gave this like 60 pages before I was like, I can't do it. I can't do it anymore. And the next book that I DNF'd was Ungodly by Kendare Blake. This is the finale in the Anti-Goddess series. I haven't liked a single book, and I got about 50 pages into this. I saw exactly where it was going, and I was like, I just can't do this anymore. So, like I said, I gave this one like about 50 to 60 pages as well. Typically, I like to give books about 100 pages, but because both of these books were sequels and I didn't really care for its previous books, I gave myself some leeway because life's too short for bad books. The next section is my 2 to 2.5 star section, and the first book in that is Splendor by Anna Godbersen. This is the finale in the Lux series, and this was just... none of them were good in my opinion. If you like the whole Gossip Girl and 1900s drama and like everything's just over exaggerated, sure, go ahead, but nothing happens. There was like one cool scene in this that I knew was gonna happen from like the start of book 2, and I just Next book I gave a 2.5 star, and that was Given to the Sea by Mindy McGinnis. I really wanted to like this because I met Mindy McGinnis. This book is personalized to me, so I actually will be keeping it instead of unhauling it. This follows a girl named Kosa who was basically born to sacrifice herself. She comes from a line of women where they sacrifice themselves to the sea to protect the kingdom, but she has to give birth to the next given before she can give herself, which created this very misogynistic culture. And when she wouldn't bear a child, it got all of the insinuations of rape and sexual assault were abundant in this, and it was kind of horrifying to read. This was so different from Mindy McGinnis's other works. I love her writing and I love her style. This did not do it for me, unfortunately. Moving into the 3-star range, I have The Wandering Star by Romina Russell. This is the second book in the Zodiac series. This one was fine. It's definitely getting better. I feel like our plot is developing a little bit more. We're getting more depth into our characters. It's definitely still really predictable. We're following Ro, who is a girl from the planet of Cancer. We're in this world where each planet represents a different zodiac sign, and all of their inhabitants inhibit those traits from the zodiac, and they are being threatened by a bunch of different outside forces. I think that this tries to be really political, and it doesn't do a great job of explaining the political system, so it got a bit confusing in that aspect, but I'm really enjoying where the story is going. It's just, I feel like it can be much more developed. Moving into the 4-star ranges, I actually have quite a few. This was actually a really good month. Most of the books that I read this month ended up in the 4 and 5-star categories, which is awesome. Some of my favorite books came from this month, and so really excited about that. So the first 4-star read I got to was Onyx and Ivory by Mindy Arnett. We follow a girl, Kate, whose father was tried and executed as a traitor. So she left the kingdom to escape that scrutiny from the public, but is unable to do so. And when the prince comes back, she finds him almost dying. She saves his life and is brought back into the castle and has to deal with the entire scrutiny while also trying to figure out why her father was actually a traitor, because she was never told. So there is a lot going for this. The magic, which the magic follows the magic is forbidden trope, which I love, and it's done really well in this. So Kate is also what is known as a wilder who has magic, and that is how she's able to save the prince when she first finds him at the beginning of this book. So she also has to hide that from the prince. There's a lot of complicated relationships. There's a lot of really interesting history about the world and about Kate's life. And there's a lot of holes that need to be filled, and I really enjoyed the rich atmosphere, the rich magic system, and this one had a lot of twists and turns that I was not expecting. The next book in the 4-star category is Incendiary by Zoraida Cordova. This book was a wild ride. This book almost reminded me of Catching Fire by Suzanne Collins, where Katniss is trying to be a revolutionary, but also at the same time trying to please everybody and stay under the thumb of the leader. We follow Ren, whose magic is basically she can see into people's memories and take them. and she worked for the king until she was liberated when she was a child. So she finds her way back to the kingdom and has to infiltrate and figure out how to save the rebellion and make sure it goes on. This was so well done. I really liked Renata, or Ren, our narrator, is a very unlikable narrator, similar to Katniss. And I really, sometimes I don't think that that's done very well, but I think in this case it was, because we get to understand why she is the way she is, and I really enjoyed that. Even though she was liberated as a child, she's not really welcome in the city, and she's not really welcome in the rebellion either. So when Renata has to infiltrate back into the city, a lot of these like memories get stirred up, and we learn that almost every single character in this book is morally gray. And I really enjoyed all of the twists, because a lot of the characters you feel like you understand at least their general part to play, but there's so many twists and turns. The magic is extremely unique. There are different types of magics, which is great and super fun to understand and learn about, as well as the history in this. It is extremely vibrant and just overall a great story. I highly recommend it. Alrighty, next in the 4-star category is Everless by Sarah Holland. This follows a girl who is basically has been on the run her entire life, and in this world, your time left on Earth while being alive is the currency. So you pay with days or years or months, and that's how you pay people. So her and her father are on the run, constantly moving around to hide from the royals. Our main character Jules doesn't really understand why. She only knows the horror stories her father has told her, but when her father, when she finds an opportunity to go work at the castle in the capital to earn a ton of money, she takes it and goes to the castle against her father's wishes to try to earn them some more time. But what she doesn't understand is that that is the worst possible place for her to be in this world, because her father wasn't running because of himself, he was running because of her. There's so many secrets, and it's a lot of fun. The concept is well fleshed out and really intriguing. I think one of my favorite aspects about this was the lore and the history of the world, where we figure out where time hasn't always been a currency like that. It hasn't always been that way. And I think it's really intriguing as to how they explain that and make you understand how it came to be and why it is the way that it is. Next in this category is Frozen Tides by Morgan Rhodes. This is the 4th book. It's very floppy. This is the 4th book in the Falling Kingdom series, and I think as of right now this one is my favorite. This expanded our world tenfold. This is if you haven't been keeping up with me reading this series, it is basically a YA Game of Thrones with multiple POVs, multiple storylines, political, romance, rivalries, murder, just so many things, which is glorious. And magic, there's tons of magic. This book had so many twists, and I do think my favorite was we got more of the world, where we originally start on this island split into 3, and now we've kind of ventured into the mainland. And it's just so unique on how this world operates, because you think that you understand the system on the island, but then when you expand, there's so much more. What I also really liked about this is we got more in depth with our villains, which I love a good villain background story, villain redemption arc. I'm here for all things villains. And we got a ton of that in this one, which I am living for. The twists and turns are just a wild ride. I am so scared to see what's gonna happen, because the end of this book, lots of bad things happened. So many bad things. I'm just not ready for all of the bad things that are happening here. And overall, I just highly recommend this series. It's very fast-paced, very quick and easy reads, and they're just all great. And the last book in the 4-star category is The Alcazar by Amy Ewing. This is the sequel and finale to the Cerulean, so we pick up right where we left off with Sara and Leela trying to figure out why their tether to their world hasn't broken yet. And they both start uncovering a lot of secrets about their history that has been lost to time, because they've been on this planet for over 900 years, when typically they only stay attached to one planet for about 100 to 200 years. So they start to learn all of these things, and it's just so intriguing to know the history of this alien world, and the villain dynamics of this were amazing. There were so many unique villains in this they had that trope where it wasn't a villain just evil being evil, it was a villain thinking that what they were doing was the right thing. And I really enjoy those types of characters because they have such depth and history, and they have a lot of dynamic aspects about them. Overall, this series, I think the characters were beautiful. I think this was a very fantastical, unique world. It is a very weird book. I will say these books are super weird. The way that this world, the city above the sky works, it's an all-female poly society where the women form into triads in their marriages and then go have girls to form more triads. It's weird to wrap your head around, but it is so unique and I love it. So moving on to the 5-star range, I have 4 books that I gave 5 stars this month, and that is never happened before. So I'm gonna just jump right into these books because they were all great. So the first book in this category is The 2 Lives of Lydia Bird by Josie Silver. It follows a girl, Lydia, who is about to get married when her fiance dies in a car crash. But every so often when she dreams as if the crash never happened and sees what her life would be like if her fiance was still alive. And while she's grieving in the real world, she's living out this fantasy in the dream world. And this hit home so hard. So I am getting married soon. So this was probably not the best book to read, but it was still, it makes you appreciate the people you have now, and to just cherish the time you do have. And what I really liked about this is it didn't over-romanticize the dream world. It didn't, when she was in the when Lydia was in real life, she would over-romanticize her relationship, which her relationship was. It was good and healthy and a great relationship. But what she ended up doing is, right now, if he hadn't died, we'd be married and everything would be perfect. Whereas in the dream world, when we did see where they would be, it wasn't all rainbows and unicorns. They were facing real life problems. With their relationship, with their marriage, with their careers. So it was really intriguing, and I was really afraid that it was going to over-romanticize and then there would be no reason for her not to go into the dream world. Where they made this very realistic, I think this really showed the grief process extremely well, and I would highly recommend this. It was phenomenal. The next 5-star read that I have is Girl, Serpent, Thorn by Melissa Bashardoust. This book is amazing. I know you guys saw Sara rave about this in her video that came out on Sunday. If not, check out her book because I forced her to read this because I loved it. This book follows Zoraida, who is a princess who is poisonous to the touch. And basically this follows her when dealing with this curse that she's been dealt with her entire life, and her also trying to break the curse. And I just think that the way that they go about this is extremely beautiful. The prose is amazing, and I love how our characters aren't perfect. Zoraida isn't perfect, and she admits that. She just wants to be rid of the curse. She wants to be able to touch other people. She wants to no longer be shut away and hidden from the world. And then we add in demons and awesome history and fae and all of the things I love in a fantasy book, and we jam pack it in there and it flows beautifully, and I love everything about this book. It is about betrayal of trust. Who do you trust when you've been sheltered your entire life? And also about forgiveness and animosity and dealing with trauma with your family. It was just so beautifully written, and I loved it. And it's not that long for how beautiful and impactful this was. I am in love with this book. This is definitely a book I'm going to be rereading every year. The next 5-star book comes to no surprise to anyone because this book has taken BookTube, Instagram, everywhere by storm. And that is The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. This is a adult fantasy following a girl named Rin who takes this test to try and test into the highest general school, even though she's from a poor farm town. But when she ends up actually testing into the school and testing the highest in her region, she gets to go to this general school and is ostracized for her gender, her social class, and her skin color and race. But on the brink of war, she has to learn, she deals with all of it in stride and just goes with the flow and knows what she wants, and I loved that about Rin. This is an extremely dark and twisted story. It is 110% adult. This shows the brutality of war and what happens during war and post-war, as well as preparations and the lengths people will go to protect their people and their home. I also really love all of our characters. They are extremely dynamic and diverse and all have such amazing depth to them. And they're not perfect characters, which again is one of the things I crave in a book. I love a good morally gray character, and boy, this book is full of them. This was my favorite book of July for sure. This was just, it was fantastic. 110%. Highly recommend this, but be warned, every single trigger warning is in this. I guarantee it, but it is extremely well worth the read. It is so it immerses you immediately into the story, and it's so beautiful. And the last book in this category is The Kingdom of Copper by S.A. Chakraborty. This is book 2 in the Daevabad series, which I started last month, and I am in love with this series. We follow Nahri, who lives in Cairo during about, I think, the beginning of early 20th century? Maybe? Not super sure. But she finds out that she's actually not fully human, and she is brought to Daevabad to earn her place among the Nahids, which is the healers, which were thought to be an extinct family of the Jinn, or the Devas. This book is extremely vibrant in its storytelling. I fall into this every time I read it. And anytime I picked it up, I just fell immediately into our characters. And I love Nahri, Dara, and Ali. They are phenomenally written characters, with each having their own goals and ambitions, and watching them work against and work with each other to reach these ambitions, to make peace and finally have a peaceful society, is amazing. This is a very highly political story, which was a tad bit confusing, but the author does provide a glossary in the back of the book to help kind of understand, which was really helpful. I will say one of the things about this book that I really loved is we didn't pick up right where we left off from City of Brass. We pick up actually 5 years after the fact. And I thought that that was extremely well done. The pacing was very fast over a long period of time. We pick up 5 years after City of Brass, and then things happen at different month intervals. And I think this book takes place over a year-ish time, but it doesn't feel dragged out. Everything is noted and everything is like explained extremely well, to the point of where you were just like, oh, well, this is 6 months after the last time, like after the last chapter. Okay, cool. And you understand why it's done that way. And I loved that about this book. I rarely see books written with that fast of a pace done well. This one does it perfectly. I highly recommend this series. Hopefully I'll be able to finish this series. I've heard heart-wrenching things about the final book, but I'm really excited to get to it. These are gorgeous books inside and out. I love it. I love it so much. So those are all of the books that I read in the month of July. I read a ton, not as many as I did in June. I got everything done on my TBR right to like midnight of the last day of July, so I did it. And I've got a really good head start in August, so I'm really excited to start my TBR for August. Feel free to check that out, which will be coming out soon. So yeah, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. We post videos every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday, and I will see you guys in our next video. Bye!